Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Agents of Mace. We're continuing our X-Men Legacy watch through with the one that sort of doesn't fit anywhere, but I guess if it were to fit anywhere, it would fit best behind the Wolverine, but
Uh,
also it doesn't fit behind the Wolverine because the timeline doesn't make sense. So we're not doing it after the Wolverine, we're doing it after Logan because we want to watch that instead. So we're on X-Men Days of Future Past. So to kind of recap the Wolverine, since I don't know that the way that these movies came out, that is the movie that came out before this one. Um, Literally nothing in that movie matters. So we won't recap the whole movie. Instead, we'll recap the end of the movie where Logan goes to the airport and before he gets through the haha metal detector, um, he is stopped by Magneto and Professor X, who basically are like, we need your help. Come with us. And we, as the audience members, are supposed to assume that that leads us into this next movie. Even though, again, the timeline doesn't make sense, especially seeing that the Wolverine that we get in Days of Future Past seems to be an older version of this Wolverine. So I guess that's all you need to know because again, literally nothing matters. These are all characters we've seen before, but again doesn't really matter because these are like sort of, I guess, variants of them. Now that we know about variants, this could be a variant movie. So yeah, welcome. I'm Drew,
I'm Luke.
I'm Elisa.
and we are the Agents of Mace. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you're super excited to go back in time, but also to the future, but again to the past to figure out what is going on and how any of this makes sense, I guess. Um, this has been, I've taken a poll with a couple people, and surprisingly, this movie has been well received by a lot of people. I heard the term refrigerator logic, I think, which means as you're watching the movie, or refrigerator plot, I think that's what it was. While you're watching the movie, none of the plot holes seem to matter because the movie is fun and bright and funny and there's things happening. But as soon as you walk to the refrigerator to get a drink, you start thinking about all the plot holes and you go, wait a minute, this movie is awful and doesn't make any sense. Um, so we'll start with, I guess, first thoughts on this weird entrance into the X-Men universe.
Yeah, I just re finished watching this afternoon. Started it yesterday. It's been a minute since I've watched this one. Yeah, I would agree. It's like there's a lot going on. You got new characters, but the big thing with this is you're basically taking like characters from both like the legacy X-Men movies and then like the younger generation of X-Men and kind of getting them into a singular picture. And I think just that whole concept is probably what excited everyone more than anything else. Is just like, oh, cool. We get to see like how like, Logan's gonna kind of go through time and interact with like these same people, but like at different stages of their life. And um yeah, I think that trumps everything because I think that just being in that world makes it a fun watch.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like kind of watching this since we've gone through X-Men 97, it's just like, oh man, there's like so many things they could have done different here to like really amplified it. Because when you kind of look at it, it's a little lazy. And it's one of those like, kind of let's spell it out for the audience, even though they probably could have figured it out on their own type of script. But all in all, like it's entertaining. Like it's freaking Wolverine, man. He's like the main star and kind of piecing it together. And I feel like this, like, like really with like the Wolverine and this one and Logan, is when Hugh was like really just he was just so into this role.
Hmm.
He was just giving it his all, and you get like some great like Wolverine moments. And plus, it's like the one where it's like the majority of the film he doesn't have his adamantium,
Hmm.
so he's
Hmm.
just got the bone claws, which is pretty fun. And
Yeah, the
I
magic
guess my
changing color bone claws.
right, yeah. And then I think my last note is like you get one of the fun Quicksilver moments,
Hmm.
which is like I could watch like that whole moment on repeat because I
I
think
mean,
that was just
100. We'll definitely dive into it more, but it's a hundred
and some of the
percent like
jokes and some of the like little one-liners that Quicksilver makes. I'm
yeah.
just like, that's for the comic nerds.
The
Hmm.
the like slow motion Quicksilver scene is probably the best representation of a superpower in any
Yeah.
film or digital cinema
Oh yeah.
project ever
And
made.
Hmm.
like just that scene alone, it's like as just like a general superhero comic fan, it's like when you look at the Flash moments that we got through the DCEU, it's like, come on now.
Hmm.
Like,
You
yeah,
didn't
y'all
even
gotta
try.
step it.
You
Didn't
didn't
even
even try.
try.
Did you guys watch this movie?
Yeah.
How about you, Elisa?
I'll agree that this one was a fun one. It's one that by the time it came out, I was not expecting these to be like taken seriously or be very good, but that's fine because I walked in and I got exactly what I wanted. It was a movie that brought in all the legacy actors, all of the what's his name, the Matthew Vaughn crew as well. And those are all like one thing this series has gotten right very consistently is that they are extremely well cast. So having everybody together was really, really fun. And you guys are right. Like this is peak Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Everybody else is doing great things. Um, there is something weird about this movie, and it's probably just because, it doesn't really seem like it fits anywhere. Like it doesn't make sense in any timeline that they've ever set up. Then it kind of almost feels like instead of a real movie, like a serious movie that's in this franchise, it feels like a fan movie. Like, but a fan that mysteriously had like $100 million budget and got everybody else to agree to be in it. Um, and none of that means that it's bad. Again, I enjoyed this one. I think it's a lot of fun. I asked Mason what he thought because he is the authority in this household. And he said that this was probably, in his opinion, the best X-Men proper movie. And he said, but it's
Mm,
still not very good.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah, I had fun watching this one.
yeah, if you look at like Bryan Singer's, filmography here with the X-Men or just superheroes in general, this is his highest rated.
Mhm.
Um, which is just a little bit. I mean, X-Men and X2 are pretty neck and neck in terms of like their rating, but this one like jumped up a little bit.
And this movie is 100% a fan service movie.
Mhm. Which
Yeah,
is
for
fine.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
And definitely a like nostalgia grab for people to be like, look, here's all the X-Men from the original X-Men movies, but also here's all the X-Men from the new X-Men movies. They're in the same movie together. It's like, oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, whatever it
Yeah.
takes to get Ian McKellen a new summer house. I'm here for
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
He deserves it.
So I don't know if you
Now,
guys know this,
uh-huh.
but there are two versions of this movie.
Oh.
There is the theatrical cut, which I'm assuming probably everyone listening to this episode has seen. I'm assuming it's the one that you two watched. It's the one that I watched. There is a second cut of this movie titled the Rogue Cut, where Rogue has a huge role in this movie, and all of it was cut out, and
Wait,
you don't see
what?
any of it. So
I don't know if I've ever heard of that.
I will be sure to bring up the moments. You can watch the Rogue Cut online, I believe. I don't think there's physical copies anywhere unless somebody is illegally
And
selling them. Um, but yeah, all the scenes were shot. I don't know if all the scenes were shot, but most of the scenes were shot. I think Anna Paquin was even um, stated as like headlining in this movie in early promotional stuff. And then surprise, she's not in the movie because they decided to go a different direction for some reason. So I'll bring up the like changes there when we get to them. There's not a ton of them, but yeah.
Like I can purchase this right now on Amazon.
Oh, okay. So I guess there is it physical or digital?
There is X-Men Days of Future Past, the Road Cut Blu-ray.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it's got like, the classic Blu-ray disc, but like the whole like sleeve is like red.
Hmm.
And then you have Magneto and then Logan, Raven, Professor X, and then Rogue is kind of standing like right behind Magneto
Yeah.
and Logan.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll bring up the moments that are different.
Multi-format, $20. I'm
Hey,
considering and buy now.
um,
I didn't know this existed.
yeah, yeah, and it changes the movie pretty. I mean, I guess it doesn't change the outcome of the movie, but it changes how they get there. Um,
Gotcha.
so to kind of kick off, this is, it's pulled from the comics. There's the series, Days of Future Past, where basically the future is Sentinels are killing all the mutants. So Bishop has to go back in time to like warn everybody and fix it so that this isn't the future that happens. In the comics, Bishop goes back and then can't get the job done, so he like comes back and gets Wolverine, and they both go back, and that's
Mhm.
sort of how it plays out. In this movie, we see Bishop as the one who's like going back in time to warn them, but like really going back in time to warn them like minutes before the Sentinels show up so that they can warp somewhere else. Um, in the comics, it's actually Rachel Summers, Scott and Jean's daughter, who is the one that is sending people back in time. Uh, Weirdly, they just decided to write her out of this and instead gave Kitty Pryde a brand new power set that allows her
Hmm.
to send people back in time.
Mhm.
Does it make sense? No. Is it fine? Sure. Um, so we see this group of mutants that's like in the future. By the way, the future is 2023 is the year that this is. So imagine
Welcome to
last
the
year
future,
if
everyone.
Sentinels were flying around, right? Um, so dystopian 2023. The group that we see are Kitty, Professor X, Magneto, uh, Iceman, or Bobby, I guess,
Yeah.
Kitty Pryde, Wolverine. I keep wanting to Colossus. I keep wanting to say
Colossus.
Cyclops. Colossus. We see Sunspot, which fun because now we just saw Sunspot. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, but Sunspot is in New Mutants. So when we watch that, we'll see another version of Sunspot. So Sunspot's really
Hmm.
coming to the front here.
Yeah.
We get Bishop, Sunspot, Warpath, and Blink are the other
Hmm.
X-Men that are with this group. In Storm. I don't know if I said her.
Hmm.
So this group is sort of just like blipping around trying to figure out how to fix this problem, but they can really only send Bishop back in short amounts of time. They like loosely explain that it will tear apart your mind if you go back in time too much.
Hmm.
So then they decide, well, we can send Logan back because his mind will repair itself.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works, but okay. Um, so this is where the first change is with the Rogue cut. They basically explained that Rogue gets captured. We get to see Rogue get captured by the Sentinels, and a mix of Rogue's abilities and Mystique's abilities are the reason that the Sentinels can adapt so quickly. We see the moment where Colossus punches one of them, and the Sentinel
Hmm.
catches Colossus's arm and then like basically steals his power.
Hmm.
That's supposed to be like a nod to the fact that like, oh, they captured Rogue and that's why the Sentinels have this ability to like adapt so quickly. Um, Essentially, this group of mutants just keeps dying over and over and over again, while Bishop goes back in time to warn them. And so then I guess in time, they don't actually die. But really,
Hmm.
whenever Bishop goes back in time, they're basically dying, hoping that he is able to successfully warn them and they're able to go somewhere else and they don't die. So that's a little dark. Um,
Yeah.
we see Wolverine when he goes under for the first time, he pops his claws and he has his adamantium claws, which again, this is another one of those moments that's like, well, how does this fit in time? Because the last time that we saw Wolverine, he got his adamantium claws chopped off and grew his bone
Mhm.
claws back. So how did he get adamantium claws again?
Yeah.
Apparently the director's answer to that was, well, he's friends with Magneto.
Hmm.
So we're assuming Magneto regrafted adamantium onto his claws. Weird pull, but
Yeah.
okay. Again, this is another of those moments where you don't think about it until you walk to the refrigerator. Um,
But kind of going back. Sorry.
no,
We'll,
yeah, you're
we'll
good.
probably get we'll probably do a lot of like
Back to
talking in
the
circles on
future
these
past.
episodes, I
Yeah.
feel. Because it's like we've said, where does this truly fit in? Because there's ties in the legacy ones and like with the younger ones, because a lot of people will say that this movie is technically like the sequel to First Class. This is like the follow-up to First Class.
Hmm.
Sure. Maybe, yeah, but it also like ties in, so it goes into like this whole like it would have made more sense if he's like, well, these are variants. Like this
Hmm.
is like a whole different Wolverine. I was like, okay, I can buy that a little bit more versus, oh, Magneto just put it back.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It makes no sense. Um, Logan gets picked. He's the one going back. So he gets sent back in time. He wakes up as like younger, I guess, Wolverine. And we see Hugh Jackman's butt.
Hmm.
We see the samurai sword from uh the Wolverine hanging on the wall. So I don't know what that
Yeah.
means. I guess that happened. And he kept the sword, even though in that he's like, no, I don't want to keep the sword. I don't know.
Or yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
um, this is where we get a lot of weird changes from the X-Men movies. We see like a lot of characters that we have already seen cast as different people from the original three X-Men movies. And also the things that they are working towards are not quite the same things they're working towards in these movies. So that's weird too. Like we get a young William Stryker. He's like
Mhm.
sort of collecting mutants for what you assume is the Weapon X program, but also it sounds more like he's on the path of like, I want to try to figure out how to cure my son who's a mutant.
Mm. Yeah.
Whereas future version of him is more like my son's a mutant and I hate him, but I'm also making like unstoppable weapons. And it's like, okay, all right. So not sure what's going on there. We do see Trask, and Trask was played by somebody else in the original X-Men movies, so they've recast him for this. So it's
Mhm.
sort of like again, like, so does this fit the original movies, or is this a different universe? And you're just trying to pretend like it fits with the original movies. I don't know. We get to go see the Xavier Institute. Charles is like, I just wrote in my notes, wild drunk Charles. Um, because he just stumbles around and drinks. He
Mm.
can walk. They sort of explain that he can walk because he uses his, it's like, telekinesis to walk. But
Um,
He
was
has
it?
that medicine stuff, and it's supposed to make
No,
it
it
to where he
was,
can.
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
he
but doesn't
says
the
like,
medicine like reduce his power? It's like a
well,
power.
the whole thing was like he was doing a trade-off. He was like, I can take this medicine, which makes me strong enough to walk, but it pretty much eliminates my powers.
Oh,
Because he has that discussion with Magneto. Because Magneto was
yeah.
like getting mad at him, was like, why would you give up being a mutant and all your abilities just to walk?
Hmm. It feels
Yeah,
like
but
a
it
weird choice for the professor.
it also
Mhm.
seems like couldn't Beast retroactively engineer that drug to not take away his power, but still give him the
Also,
strength
like,
to walk.
yeah, but also like look at the time zone we're in and look at the Sentinels that are being built.
Right.
Uh, It's
Yeah,
like
just make him robot legs.
make
Like
them like
what?
a suit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a weird choice, but okay. Um, we we get to see not Magneto. We get to see, the group is the young version of everybody. So we're kind of seeing like what they're all up to. We see Mystique going down the path of, leading to her. The whole reason that Logan goes back is to stop Mystique from killing Trask, because that's what
Mhm,
sets off the future that destroys everything.
mhm.
So we see her kind of learning about the experiments that Trask has been doing. As she's flipping through like all the failed experiments, I guess they're failed experiments. I don't really know. We see Azazel and Angel both appearing as
Mhm.
experiments. Not once is this ever brought up or mentioned again, even though Angel was part of the team in the
Yeah.
first X-Men First Class, and Azazel was somebody that they fought. So seemingly she would know who both of those people were,
Hmm.
and it would mean something to her and something to everyone else, but she never mentions it.
Right.
And
Just
it's like,
has her own little emotional moment then, and
yeah,
that's it.
but it's even hard to tell, like, is it emotional because she knew Angel, or is it emotional because she's just like, I can't believe they're doing this to mutants?
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
It's like a weird throwback to a
Hmm.
movie that wasn't that long before this movie.
Right.
I don't know. That was a weird choice. Meanwhile, I guess A Team uh is like, we got to figure out a way to get something. We need to figure out a way to break uh Magneto out of prison, basically. And I think it's Wolverine is like, I know a guy.
Yeah. It's basically like Wolverine's become the Rolodex.
Yeah.
He's just like, let me think. Who do I know that could help us out here? Oh yeah.
Yeah. So then we get to go and meet Quicksilver, who is by far the best part of this movie, at least for
Oh
me.
yeah.
Um, I really enjoy. It's one of the things with, we talked about the Flash earlier. It's one of the things with the Flash that they always throw away in the first like 2 seconds of the Flash, which is like the, I guess, science behind his ability is that he burns calories so fast he has to constantly eat. So in the Flash, they're just like, oh, he has these pellets that he eats and they're like super calorie dense and that's it. Whereas in this movie, he's like, every scene, it's almost like Brad Pitt, right? Like every
Yeah.
scene we see him eating something
Hmm.
at some point in the scene. And it's like, oh yeah,
And
that's, he has to like
he,
eat a bunch of calories.
I mean, he's got a whole wall that's
Yeah.
just basically Twinkies and snack foods that he
Yeah.
stole.
Yeah, and it's just funny to think he's playing ping pong with himself.
Hmm.
Um, he's got like a bunch of old band posters and stuff all over his wall. He seems like someone that I would want to hang out with. Um,
But it's not just that. It's just like it's like as he's playing ping pong, he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I've already gone out to your car and looked at all of your stuff."
yeah, yeah, and he stole all of their IDs and everything. Yeah, it's just like, God, he's just the best character. Um,
Yeah.
and I honestly wish they used him more. They use him a good amount, but
Hmm.
I wish they used him more. Um, they basically say like, okay, you're gonna help us. We're gonna break out Magneto, which leads to like, I mean, comedic moment after comedic moment of him like breaking in, like duct taping that guy to the wall. He just has like a ring of duct tape on his belt so that he can like tape people up. I thought that was funny. Um,
That's what we need. We need like Quicksilver utility belt.
yeah, it has like real practical things that I guess if you were fast, they would also be better.
Okay, here's oh man, I wish they could have. It's like how many shoes does he like burn through?
Yeah, it's the only, they take the time to mention the calorie thing. They don't take the time to discuss like how his
Well, the
shoes
footwear.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or how his feet don't burn off of his body.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Right.
like what's the friction like? Um we do see him use his like vibration power to break this like bulletproof glass, basically. Which I thought like, okay, cool, but also seems dangerous. And how did all the glass break? Not just like one panel that he was shaking. Um, he gets Magneto, and probably one of my favorite lines in the movie, he just says, "Do you know karate?" And Magneto says, "I don't know karate, but I know crazy." And I was like, wow, wow, like what a line to put in this X-Men movie. It just like it doesn't fit, but it's funny. Um, and then yeah,
But
this
then,
is
like, my
the
favorite moment during that whole part is like, he's like, "So what do you do?" And he's like, "I can control metal." And he's like, my mom once knew a guy that could do that.
yeah, yeah. And well, and this is like a weird movie too, right? Because this movie came out around the same time that Age of Ultron came out. And this was the huge debate between Sony and Marvel, which was Sony and Marvel both sort of owned the rights to Wanda and Quicksilver. So they came to an agreement where Marvel could use the characters, but they couldn't say mutant. So in Age of Ultron, Wanda and Quicksilver are enhanced. Meanwhile, Sony's side of the agreement was that they couldn't mention the Avengers, which I feel like isn't that big a deal to Sony because especially they at this point they're like this is in the past, maybe pre-Avengers. Um, Although I guess technically in the Marvel Cinematic Universe the Avengers would have been around. It would have just been like Hank and whatever the like early Avengers were. I don't remember who else was with Hank, but he had a team, right? So I
Yeah.
guess not really the Avengers, but sort of. Anyway,
Hmm.
it's
I
confusing.
think part of the agreement was also that in Age of Ultron they couldn't call Pietro Quicksilver, but they could call him Quicksilver in the Sony movies, but they
Hmm.
never call him Pietro. He just has that mailbox that says Maximoff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because later in the movie we do see him holding a little sister, which could be meant to be Wanda, but we don't know.
Yeah, and it's also confusing because in this movie, he makes the joke, right? My mom
Mhm.
knew a guy. Timeline wise, because again, this movie doesn't super make sense where it fits, but
Mhm.
timeline wise, in I guess it's the movie that follows this movie, but technically in the timeline, we have already watched this movie, which is Age of Apocalypse. And in Age of Apocalypse, it is like confirmed that Magneto is his father. So, ugh, all right. I mean, I guess if we were watching these movies the way that they came out, we wouldn't know that yet, but we already know that. So it's like, okay, good joke, I guess. Um, but also none of that makes sense because, okay, so yeah, where's Wanda? You're telling us that Quicksilver is here and Quicksilver is the son of Magneto. Anne's last name is Maximoff. You would assume that the sister would be Wanda, but Wanda would have powers too.
And also she's like in the comics, right?
Mhm.
She's always his twin in the comics because I thought that that was the case.
Yes.
Okay. Well, little sister Wanda.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, in this one it's like, yeah, is she a little sister? I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like a weird choice to just not include her too, or at least have like a throwaway moment where he's like, yeah, my sister can do stuff too. I don't know. Um, but yeah, this is the scene where we get to see the slow motion scene. He runs around to time in a bottle and does just the funniest things to like knock all these guards out and save
Yeah.
his friend. He saves his friends last, which risky but funny. Um, Stops the bullets from hitting them. Um, this is where we get another like jump to the future and see like what's going on in the future and or I guess yeah, we jump to the future, we see what's going on. They're getting attacked. Um, this is where we get another Rogue scene where they find out that Rogue is being held at this like detention facility that is actually the X Mansion. It has been taken over and is now used for like an experiment. area basically, and that's where they learn, okay, Rogue is being held there. So they start putting together this plan. They're going to go rescue Rogue. We go back. Let's see. Is this when we go back to the past? Oh, okay. No. So they make the plan in the Rogue cut. Sorry. They make the plan to go rescue Rogue. They go to get her in the rescue mission to rescue Rogue. This is about the time that Kitty gets cut by the claws. Because I think in the past we see Wolverine seeing what's his name? Stryker.
This is when he sees Stryker.
Yeah, and it makes him like freak out in the future, and his claws pop out and it cuts Kitty. And so in the Rogue cut, Kitty is like fading fast because she gets cut. So they need to replace Kitty with Rogue. So they have to go save Rogue to bring her back to take the place of Kitty. And they go to rescue her. While they're there to rescue her, Bobby gets killed. Poor Iceman dies again. They're able to rescue Rogue to bring her back to basically like take Kitty's powers to then take the place of Kitty so that it's a little more stable moving forward with the power. Although that goes back to like, how long does Rogue's power work? Like, how long can she steal your power for? Who knows? Going back to the past, we see a lot of like the scene where Trask is talking to a bunch of people about mutants and about his Sentinel program. Meanwhile, the X-Men are trying to get there because they need to stop Mystique from killing Trask. As they break in, Mystique gets found out basically, and like a fight ensues. She tries to run away. Eric curves a bullet, which we've already sort of heard that he could do because they make a passing mention to the fact that he may have been the one that assassinated JFK.
Which turns into an even weirder crack later.
Yeah, when they're like, JFK is a mutant, and you're like,
yeah.
Wait, so he killed a mutant?
He's like, I was trying to save him because he's one of us, and they never even say like what his mutation was. Even though I'm dying to know the in-universe explanation of JFK's mutation.
Charm.
I was about to say like super charisma.
Well, he's able to curve the bullet, and it sticks into Mystique's leg. They do a cool thing where we see a lot of like camera shots, but like old-timey camera shots, almost like home video.
Yeah, I did like those moments.
Yeah,
those are kind of cool.
It was cool. It kind of like put you in the moment a little more. We keep going to Magneto for help. And every single time, Magneto sort of burns everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But then we keep going back to him for help again. And it's like, you guys, you got to learn. You got to stop going to him for help. He's not here to help you. He's here to do his own thing.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing with this. It's just like, no, like, you and Charles sent me together. Like, y'all are friends. Like, you don't realize, like, because that's the whole thing between Logan and Eric. It's like, I've spent many, many years trying to take you down. But the thing is, we're both, he's trying to play off this whole, like, we're both survivors, and, you don't realize that, like, you do basically turn around, and we're all kind of connected like family. But yeah, none of that information seemed to really latch on with this younger Eric. He was just kind of like, no, I'm still going to take over everything.
Yeah, I don't like humans. He goes and basically just like takes over a train full of Sentinels by like weaving metal rebar into them. I still don't 100% understand his power level.
Yeah, it seems like his power level in this movie is like really advanced.
Yeah.
Also, it's just like you're at this like the White House, and it's like all these gigantic robots appear, and I'm just like, you would think there'd be a little bit more shock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no
Or
one
it just
seems
seemed it just seemed like
robots
everyone's
normal.
like, yeah. It's just like it's
It's it's 1973.
right.
Like nobody knows what giant robots are.
I know. It's just like a bunch of Terminators appeared, or it's almost similar like a bunch of like, if Tony was there and it's like a bunch of Iron Man suits. It's just like I would expect more worry, like just people just being generally worried or gasping. Because also, yeah, so this was 73, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like giant purple robots that can fly,
Right. That
have like,
really only one room of like 10 people know about.
yeah, that have miniguns on their arm.
Right.
Like, I
Yeah.
would be out of there.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It's also interesting how the area is full of people, right?
Yeah.
Full of people. Eric flies in a stadium, like
Yeah.
he rips
Like,
apart a stadium and brings it in to basically like enclose the area. He puts the stadium down. All the people are gone. Where did they go?
where they go.
I have no idea. How did they escape? But they are not there. There are zero people there for the rest of the movie that they are in this like enclosed area. And it's like, well, that's weird. Like this crowded room or this crowded area full of people, and all the people just magically disappear. Um, but then I get confused, like, okay, so he's able to not only float this huge stadium over and set it down, he's also able to control like at least 10 sentinels without even seeing them, but they're autonomously doing things
What he
that they would
wants.
do. Right. Like, what is his power level? And like, how do you control that many things at one
Well,
time
yeah.
doing completely different stuff?
And he's like taking all the weapons from any of the guards in the area, and they're like
Mm-hmm.
kind of holding people hostage in a way or
Mm-hmm.
floating around. Like,
Yeah, and then he rips up the like safe that they're all hiding in. It's just like, what
so
this
yeah, that's the other thing. He's doing all this stuff, and at the same time, he was like trying to find where they're hiding, to find the metal to like pull them from underground.
yeah. If anything, like sorry, buddy, they gotta put you down. We shouldn't have taken you out of that plastic room.
Yeah. Okay,
And
so
also, how did he
then
stay in the plastic room? Couldn't he have
I
pulled
feel like he
metal
would have
from a mile
from
away?
yeah. You think that yeah, he could have gotten out of there, I feel like. But it's like look at that amount of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like while all of this stuff is going on, then you go back into the future and now the Sentinels are finding them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, well, we got to basically protect Logan. We can't break that connection. So like they're all going out to fight. Now we see like older Magneto's like, all right, game time. And I just don't feel like he did anything as cool, right?
At all. All he
At all.
did was like
Throw
maybe
the
take out,
airplane.
yeah, he took out like one sentinel maybe,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the time he was trying to barricade the door and then got
Yeah.
stabbed. And it's like, what? Come on, man. Like, especially because technically this future Magneto would have lived through the age of apocalypse where he was so powerful that he was able to pull all of the metal out of the
Hmm.
earth, the entire earth. So it's like, well, hold on. You're telling me that you're so weak now you can barely do anything? I don't they're wildly jumping around his power level.
Yeah. At that stage, I would have felt like he could have pulled enough metal to basically build his own army of like metal men to fight
Right. Yeah.
and hold
Like
them or
anti-sentinels.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, it it takes you out of it when you think about it, like how powerful he is all of a sudden.
Mhm.
Especially when like he had to use, it seemed like he was struggling to like bend that bullet. You know,
Mhm.
it didn't see
Mhm.
that didn't seem like an easy thing to do, but here he is controlling multiple things at one time in like a pretty good distance away from him. Um, including one of the things he does, which is run a bunch of rebar through Wolverine and bend it all around. So it kind of gives you the like nod to him pulling the adamantium out of Wolverine. And then he just tosses him in the river. And
Yeah.
it's like,
I mean,
oh,
that's like of all the things like that Logan was trying to get through, and he was just like, "You call yourself a survivor," and then literally it's like flicking him thousands of
oh,
miles away.
I I can't not mention it because I mentioned it in
Mhm.
every movie so far. They try to do the metal detector gag again, but this time because it's in the past, he doesn't have metal bones, so he walks through and then is surprised that it doesn't go off. And I was like,
Mhm.
wow, they couldn't give us one movie with Wolverine where they don't make him walk through a metal detector. Like, okay. If I guess if anything, this is the one time it makes sense, right? Just to remind you that, like, oh yeah, he doesn't have metal in his bones yet. Okay. But yeah, I made sure to like write that and circle it 3 or 4 times on my notes because I was like, the metal detector scene. Um,
So, yeah, mid-episode question. What's the Wolverine, Deadpool and Wolverine metal detector scene gonna be? It's almost like I feel like they're putting so much emphasis on just his rage, like he's just gonna walk through it and then just tear it apart.
what I really hope happens is that the metal detector scene in Wolverine or Deadpool and Wolverine is that he walks up to one and then
And
sidesteps it and goes around it
yeah,
because I feel like we see him go through it every single time, but every time he goes through it, it seems to be in a situation where like he didn't have to go through it. He
yeah,
could have figured out a way around it.
yeah.
So it would just be
Either
funny for him to be like, no.
it's either that or if Ryan Reynolds is clever enough to just be like, hold it, like I think we've seen this enough, like let's just move on.
Yeah, yeah. He's about to walk through it and then it pauses. Ryan
Yeah.
Reynolds says that and then it just skips to the next scene. That would be great. Um, so Eric is controlling all these people. He's doing all this stuff. Basically, like, yeah, we see another sort of like X-Men 1 when Magneto like pulls all the guns away from everybody and then points them back at them. He does the same thing here. He like pulls all the pistols away from everybody and points them back. Um, he and Charles are having sort of like a it's interesting. They're having a conversation. We've already seen Charles have like a conversation with future Charles. So it seems like this would be the moment for future Charles to like reach back and have a conversation with like past Magneto or let past
Yeah.
Magneto have a conversation with future Magneto. Um, but I guess it works because they kind of get through to him and he's about to just be like, okay, sorry, I'm gonna leave. Um, and this is when Mystique shows up. She's gonna take her moment. She has a gun. Trask is in her sights. She's gonna kill him. But they're able to convince her not to, and she drops the gun. And this happens to be at the moment that the Sentinels have broken in the future, and they're about to kill everyone. And as they shoot their laser, like their what's that thing called? The destroyer, right? In Thor. Like
Oh yeah.
these just look
That's
like
what they look
destroyers.
like.
And
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
just are shooting their beams to incinerate everybody. And as it's happening, all of a sudden the future gets changed. They all disappear. Um, Logan is able to like go back to the future. When he gets there, he's a little confused, but like the school is back put together. Everyone is doing okay. Um, we get the weirdest cameo that again breaks all the rules of like anything that's happened, which is we see Jean and then we see Scott, and it's like, oh, Jean and Scott are alive. But also, how are Jean and Scott alive just because Trask didn't die and make Sentinels, which weren't a part of any of those storylines,
Yeah.
including the Dark Phoenix, which would have still happened at this point? Because the whole thing that
Hmm.
led to Dark Phoenix was Wolverine in X1 is found, right? They bring him in, they realize like he doesn't know where he is or who he is or anything. So X2 is him going to find out who he is.
Mm-hmm.
X2 basically leads to Jean dying,
Mm-hmm.
which then leads to X3, where she comes back as the Phoenix and kills Scott, and then ends up dying at the end because Wolverine has to kill her. So you're telling me that somehow, because Trask didn't die, none of that happened?
Yeah,
It makes
hard.
no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But this is like the moment where I was really leaning into like, all right, this has to be another universe because the big thing is they definitely make Logan look older. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
got gray hair in this,
Mm-hmm.
or at least even if I'll have to go back again and double check like the beginning of it. But I mean, they make this scene feel like him stand out a little bit more with like the gray is like showing up a lot more purposely, it
So they
seems like.
they they try to give him the look from the
Hmm.
comics of Days of Future
Yeah.
Past, where like his little like swoop hair has like
Yeah.
big gray streaks at the bottom.
Yeah.
So it is interesting that they like try to make him look older, but
Hmm.
somehow in this future he looks younger
But
than he
yeah,
did in the other future,
I know.
but
It's
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 supposed to be the same time.
I mean, he's like crazy fit in this movie. Like of all
Yeah.
like the Wolverine movies, like this one, I think he's like just
Well, yeah, when we see his
like
butt early in the movie, when he turns around, he like flexes his pecs for no reason.
like they're not,
Because he can.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is like no animating. I'm getting shot. All the bullets are just popping out of like just Jesus. Like,
I'm surprised they
yeah,
don't
so
bounce off.
right. Exactly. This, yeah. So yeah, it's hard. It's I do question like, you know, what's really going on here. This, during like when the time this shot, probably just more stylistic choices and
Hmm.
probably some general comic nods versus like who
Yeah.
knows if there's discussions of like
Well, also,
multiverse and
here's
any
a
of
big
that
here's
stuff.
another big question that I was just like, wow, they didn't even bother to try.
Mm.
Where's Magneto?
Yeah,
It's not like Magneto was like a side role in this whole
right.
movie. He's pretty much like the secondary lead in this movie. And then when we
Yeah.
go back to the future,
Where is he?
he's just not
What's going
there
on?
and nobody talks about him. No one is like, oh, Magneto is like on Genosha, or like, oh, Magneto
Yeah.
is he changed his ways and he's actually a, the
Well,
history
like
teacher. Well, I guess Logan's a history teacher, but
Logan's a history teacher, but you would almost expect like when Logan walks into the room, like you could see Professor X talking with Eric, and like they're there
yeah,
together.
yeah.
And
Or they're
even if he
like,
mentions like, even if Magneto walks out or something, and he could have been like, "Welcome back," or like, "I'm getting on the jet flying out
right,
somewhere."
right. But nope, they were just like,
No.
now we're not gonna. You don't need to know what Magneto's doing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, it was a solid ending, I guess. It did seem sort of like a Hollywood ending. All's well that ends well. This movie technically came out before Age of Apocalypse, so then the post-credit scene is a post-credit scene that shows Apocalypse and his like original four horsemen,
Four Horsemen. Yeah.
and it's supposed to lead into that. But here's another rogue cut for you. The post-credit scene in the rogue cut is not Apocalypse. Instead, it is a mirrored shot of with the first time we see Magneto in the cell,
Mm-hmm.
but this time it's Trask in the cell.
Mm.
And his facial hair is like grown out a lot. So it looks like he's been there for a long time. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if we're supposed to think that it is 2023 and he is in this cell and they're just trying to make it look like the only aging that has happened to him is that his beard has grown longer. I don't know what they were doing with that, but that is the post credit scene in the road cut. So that is the
Interesting.
final change to that.
Well, there's one other moment. It's like when they pull when they pull Logan out of the
Oh,
water.
Wolverine out. Yeah.
And then all the little barbs or whatever fall off of them. But then the last thing we see is that it's actually Mystique.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like,
Which interesting, but at the same time, is it
like
interesting? Are we
where
like
was that?
are we supposed to think that Mystique rescued him so then he didn't end up being a part of the Weapon X program? Is that what we're
Exactly.
supposed to
Yeah.
think?
Yeah.
But also that's Wolverine. Like if
Right.
Wolverine doesn't go through the Weapon X program, is he really Wolverine? And also how does time travel work? Like
Mm-hmm.
if she changed that and he didn't go through Weapon X, then would he even be able to go back to the future because that future wouldn't exist? Because he
Right.
wouldn't be the same person? I don't know. That might be
Now,
too deep for the
yeah.
for an X-Men movie.
Now, Deadpool and Wolverine. Could this version of Logan be is what we see in Deadpool and Wolverine? Or do you think it's more in line with like the one from the Wolverine?
I think it's the one from the Wolverine, which I recognize they're trying to make us believe is this one. But
Mm-hmm.
again, there are just things that don't add up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also the more and more and more and more that I see from trailers and TV spots and ads for Heineken and all of these things that I'm seeing for Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm
Mm-hmm.
being more and more and more convinced that some form of Hulk is in this movie and it's going to be a surprise. And they're trying really hard to not let people know. Meanwhile, they're showing far too much with all these trailers. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, can this movie just come out so I can stop seeing that they came out with a new trailer?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And the things that people are pulling apart now in the trailers too is wild. There's some like figure in a cage, and now people are like, "That's Bruce Banner. He's in the cage because the cage is strong." And it's like, how do you know that the cage is strong? Like, how did you pull that out of nowhere?
Well, the tough part is like they did their special showing in was it in South Korea?
I think
Where they didn't
so.
show the full movie, but I think they showed them like 45 minutes of it.
Mhm.
So who knows
Well,
what.
and there's this whole thing going around right now where it's like we saw the production stills of Wolverine and Sabretooth standing next to each other.
Hmm.
Then they came out with the extended trailer where we see that they're going to fight each other. But in the trailer, when they're about to fight each other, Logan doesn't have any damage to his suit. But then it cuts to Deadpool being like, people have been waiting for this fight for so long as he's pulling out like swords and knives from Wolverine's body. So now people are like, clearly that is not the same. They're not talking about the same person. They're not talking about Sabretooth. They're talking about somebody else. So now we're saying, who would fans be waiting for Wolverine to get a chance to fight in a movie?
Hmm.
So now I'm even more inclined to be like, that's
Yeah,
Hulk. It has to be
it's
Hulk.
got to be Hulk. Yeah, they're going this whole like it's almost like Mortal Kombat style, right?
Hmm.
The because we've it's weird with the amount of trailers that we've seen. It seems very locked into one particular like desert area
Hmm.
where they find like the Ant-Man suit
Hmm.
and there's like all these people there. But it does feel like I don't think it's or maybe it is Hulk running the show. We just don't see him, right? Like maybe
Hmm.
he's in the Ant-Man suit, but in order to get to him, like you've got to beat so many people.
I mean,
Who knows?
it's difficult because like again, I'm thinking that it's Old Man Logan, but in Old Man Logan, he both fights Bruce Banner Hulk, but
Yeah.
also after the original Old Man Logan story ends, they continued Old Man Logan, and he gets sent back in time. Hello, Days of Future Past. Um, and basically gets sent back in time to a different time where Hulk becomes Maestro, which is like super smart Hulk with like gray hair. And he
Okay.
fights Maestro to stop Maestro from being able to like go to the future to take control or something and then send Logan back. So it's like maybe it's Maestro that he's fighting, which I guess is still Hulk technically, but it's like if instead of Banner being in control of Smart Hulk, it's Hulk being in control of Smart Hulk,
Hmm.
if that makes sense in any way. Um,
I
so
mean, yeah, but like I think that's a lit. I don't think they would do that. That's super like comic nerdy,
yeah,
and they're gonna want to appeal to like everyone.
right.
So it's gonna be Bruce Banner Hulk.
Or it's gonna
Like,
they're gonna surprise us. It's like it's Spider-Man, and you're like, what? What? Tom
How?
Holland's in this movie?
yeah, or it's gonna be Red Hulk.
Yeah, yeah. Which okay,
Yeah.
they tried so hard in that trailer. There are so
Oh
many
man.
moments in that trailer that I was like, oh, they clearly digitally erased Red Hulk, but he's right there in this
Yeah.
trailer.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
then the trailer ends and they show him anyway. Why did you erase him from the whole trailer if you're going to
Well,
show him
it's like
anyway?
why even show him
Right.
in the trailer? I mean,
Just let us pretend like maybe he won't be in it, maybe he will.
yeah.
You didn't have to show him. Ugh. All right. Well,
They
that's
could have like thrown, yeah, they could have thrown like what's Julie Lewis Drive, like they could have thrown
yeah.
like her in there or something, like give more to like the Disney Plus fan, like the ones that have been like dedicated like
Right.
us.
All right. Well, Captain America is a conversation for a different movie watch through. But
Yeah, yeah.
the first trailer is out there. If you guys haven't seen it and you like to watch trailers, go check it out. It does look good. It does look a little more serious. I'm very excited to see that movie.
I'm excited. I see a lot of people like being negative on it, and I'm like, I liked Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, me too. Also, I
And
like this new serious direction they're taking.
yeah,
So I'm jazzed. Um, Getting back to Days of Future Past, we'll give it a rating. I feel like I keep forgetting to have us rate these movies again. Um, and I feel like the ratings are all over the place with this one because like I guess I have two ways to rate it, right? I have I'm just watching it to watch an X-Men movie. All right, I give it like 8 out of 10 Sentinels. If I'm watching it for like any form of like being able to understand the timeline and the plot of what's going on, it's not even like it's like the leg of 1 of 10 Sentinels. Like I don't know what's happening. I don't know what time this is. I don't know how this is tied together. It seems like this movie is completely separated from both the original X-Men trilogy and the new X-Men trilogy. This movie's not a
hmm
part of anything. It's its own thing, shoved in a corner where, like, like Elisa said, it's just like a fan picked. Some billionaire fan was like, "Oh,
hmm
if I hired you all, would you do a movie that I wrote that's like a fan service movie?" And everyone was like, "Yeah, sure."
yeah. It's yeah. This is one of those like, what it, what would have been the outcome if like Matthew Vaughn directed it versus Bryan Singer?
Would have been interesting and different.
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, I forgot. Like remember the whole Bryan Singer stuff. Like, I mean, he's kind of been booted out of everything,
Hmm.
which he did like Apocalypse was his last X-Men movie, but
Hmm.
he did X-Men, X2, and then Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. So yeah, I think it's just generally it's felt this does feel like more of like more fan service
Hmm.
as a whole, but
Which again, if you're just watching it for a fun movie, it's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah. I'm like I'd probably go like 3 out of 5 Wolverine claws.
How about you, Elisa?
I will do 4 out of 5 adamantium claws, perhaps a 3.75 claw. Because again, it was fun, and that's all that I really wanted from it. I wasn't expecting anything else. I didn't want anything else. I just want interactions between the old X-Men's and the new X-Men's, and I want Matthew Fassbender and Ian McKellen to be in the same movie. So I'm happy. I'm happy.
I will say, to like go back to, or I guess this can be the question. This can be the question for this week. I want to know if you guys think that we're gonna get Patrick Stewart or Ian McKellen in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Mm,
I feel like they
mm,
would, but I could also see either or both of them being like, no, thank you. We really liked those roles, but we're done with those and not doing it. But if there was going to be a movie that they would put them in, it feels like Deadpool and Wolverine would be it. So I want to know what you guys think.
yeah, 100%. Want to? I had yeah. You want our thoughts now, or we're gonna do our thoughts on the next episode?
We'll do our thoughts on the next episode, and
Okay.
I will,
All right.
while we're all here and looking at me, I will physically type it out, and I'll never forget. Okay. Um, Speaking of never forgetting, last week's question was something about Deadpool and Wolverine, I think. So my answer slash new question from last week will be, what from Logan do we think may be in uh Deadpool and Wolverine? And I think again, Deadpool and Wolverine seems like the perfect place to include some new or old Wolverine variants. So I'm hoping that maybe we do get an X-23, but maybe a more grown version of Laura
Mm-hmm.
in Deadpool and Wolverine. And maybe even like one of the weirder ones, like what's his name? Charlie? Uh Variants. There's like a Wolverine variant that is like missing a hand, and also he's sort of a robot.
Hmm.
And I think his name is starts with a C. Albert. No. Is it Albert?
Albert.
Yes, it's
Albert is a
Albert.
very non-Wolverine name.
Yeah, it's Albert. He's from Earth 616. He's basically a robot version of Wolverine. So
Oh man,
I'm
I want Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires.
I don't even know what that is. Lord of the
Uh
Vampires. Oh,
oh,
Wolverine.
it's I think that's part of like What If. So it's like what if Wolverine was bitten by Dracula?
Oh yeah.
That would be dope. I mean, if Blade is supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
in, that could be very interesting.
There's
Um,
also like all the new variants of Wolverine. Wolverine got cosmic powers at one time. Wolverine is also I don't know if you guys have seen the new Nova comics. I think it's called like The Last Nova.
hmm.
Pretty early on in that series, you find out that the last Nova is actually Wolverine. He inherited Nova's powers.
Wow.
There's also the one where Wolverine inherits Ghost Rider's powers and becomes the new Ghost Rider. So it's like, man, there's all kinds of cool
Yeah, I
Wolverine
saw
variants
that
that we could
one.
put
That
in
one would be
here.
cool. It's like the Helverine,
Yeah, yeah, Wolverine.
or even like the Phoenix Force Wolverine. I think, I think it would be cool to see Laura, like a version, a variant of Laura, would be fun.
Give me Honey Badger. They
And
won't,
Honey
but
Badger.
that's what I want.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm very curious. We kind of right now, we'll have like the Wolverine, like Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine.
Hmm.
Patch is in there in some way.
Hmm.
Curious, like how much runtime that version of Wolverine will get,
Hmm.
but maybe we'll get one or two more.
Fingers crossed. Well, thank you guys for listening this week. We're definitely going to continue next week with our watch through of all of these movies. I think at this point we're on Deadpool. So we're creeping up on Deadpool and Wolverine. So we're going to probably wrap this up with Deadpool, Deadpool 2, then Deadpool and Wolverine. And then we'll finish it out with New Mutants just so we can say we watched the entire X universe live action film universe, I guess I should say. Because we didn't watch that weird like early 90s like straight to VHS X-Men movie Generation X, but we'll watch that eventually. But I don't think that fits in the timeline at all. So yeah, thank you guys for listening this week, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Bye.